Welcome back to Tabletop Assault. I'm Ross, and today I'm going to be looking at the new Psychic Awakening Blood of Baal. Now this obviously focuses on the struggles between the Tyranids and the Blood Angels. Obviously a conflict that has been going on for a wee bit. They've had a bit of a rough time recently, especially I'd say probably in both parts, that they have been having a little bit of this conflict between them. I think it's Behemoth that has been fighting the Tyranid, fighting the Blood Angels. I could be wrong in that. But it's basically talking about their conflicts, how it's happened, and obviously going forward, and how the whole Psychic Awakening has panned out for them. So what I'm going to look in this is obviously divide it sort of into two sections, where I'm going to have a predominant look at Blood Angels, and of course a predominant look at Tyranids, and so my recommendations from all the stuff that is covered. So first thing to mention is narrative. So again, just like Faith and Fury, I am not going to focus too much on the narrative on this. I'd honestly say it's slightly less, going forward than the Faith and Fury. It's sort of, Faith and Fury focused a lot on going forward and stuff. But Blood Angels and Tyranids one, it sort of focuses on sort of what the conflict was and the history behind it. Then obviously when, Psychic Awakening, all that happened, and sort of their conflict now going forward and how the Blood Angels are fighting against it. The Tyranids are beginning to use some interesting stuff. I don't want to go into too much, but there's a heavy interest in Psychic and how the sort of forces, both for the Imperial and the Tyranids, are evolving with it. As I said, I won't spoil it because I want to focus on the rules, but it is a bit of an interesting read. So firstly, let's go into the Blood Angels. So a quick summary of how the Blood Angels part of this works is it's more of a clean-up of rules between their codex and the common Space Marine upgrades and units. There's also addition of many of the stratagems from the Space Marine codex, so you get them for you to use and play with, along with a few extra exclusive to the Blood Angels. All this makes it very unlikely we're gonna see a Blood Angels codex anytime soon, and I feel this is the route they're going through all over, and I would say it's highly unlikely now we'll see any forces codexes going on for a bit. Just a feeling of mine. But they are sort of, the way they're writing these, especially this is now, I think, the first sort of specialised Space Marine Codex, Space Wolves, Dark Ages, blah, 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 blah. This seems to be showing that they're bringing all the sort of missing elements from those codexes and putting it into here as their upgrade sort of supplement, if you will, compared to Imperial Fists, etc. It's sort of their supplement codex in this book. And it does make sense, that, if they're going to put them in here rather than give them a whole new book, that Psychic Awakening is just going to try and cover as much as possible. This is not to say, all this kind of bookkeeping going, they're going to add, here is, for instance, Bolter Drill, Discipline, etc. But it's just the way they are trying to go. If they're going to do Psychic Awakening, they're going to cover it all rather than you having to have PDFs. It's in this. This, I believe, should cover you from needing to go into PDFs and into the Warhammer community. Just about everything is covered in here. So, firstly, there's a page of abilities. Now, this is simply lays out the Angels of Death rule, your Bolter Discipline, your combat doctrines, etc. We all know them, but it's just a bit of bookkeeping to make sure you have a page of it, and it is in writing, it's not on the internet or anything. A bit like Chaos's Faith and Fury. Simple page, and just keeps you up to date and correct on that. Data sheets, there's a bunch of them. First page is updated weapons and war gear, just so there's no doubt in it. It's basically talking about the upgraded weapons and war gear from your Blood Angels Codex that have changed. So for instance, that's like Demolisher cannons, which are now just a straight heavy D6, which is fine, again keeping everything updated and correct. Next up we have 19 data sheets. These include 3 named characters, Mephiston, Astrorath, and Lamartes, and they may have updates through them. I know obviously Chief Librarian Mephiston does, because obviously he's now became Primaris, but I don't know about the other twos if they actually have been upgraded, but I think it's basically because they are chaplains, they can do lieutenancies, that they have put it in writing, this is how their lieutenancies work. So it's pretty good on that side. The same on, what I'd say is, unfortunately, out of all the special characters, Dante is not mentioned, but I think that's simply because he doesn't do lieutenancies and his rules do not change as they are in the Blood Angels Codex. The same goes with the next 3 are chaplains, Chaplain Terminator Armor, Chaplain Primaris Chaplain, because again, they want to reaffirm this is now how licenses work for Space Marines, or in this case, Blood Angels. So it's upgrading their, well, keeping their sort of rules correct there. After that, we of course come to Death Company Intercessors. Now these are an elite choice, 1 point more, I believe, than regular Intercessors with Black Rage, giving them an extra attack on the charge and ignore wounds on a 6. After that, they are more or less the same as Intercessors. Upgrades are almost exactly the same, except there is no Sergeant in that unit. So a member of the squad can essentially take the upgrades that I think a Sergeant can take. I'm honestly a bit disappointed by this. I would have preferred if that you gave, now I know that they don't want to give rules to stuff that they don't have models for, but I'd at least prefer if the whole unit could have chainswords. That would make them a lot more viable to just have more and more attacks, which is what Death Company Intercessors are looking for. And as far as I can see here, no, the whole unit can't be upgraded with chainswords, which is a bit of a shame. However, this still makes like a solid range unit that does okay in combat, rather than Death Company, whose desire is to shred and beat down in combat. One positive to show in this is that Primaris can suffer the Black Rage, something me and David literally about 3 days ago debated heavily on this, because obviously Blood of Baal, Mephiston, Black Rage, Primaris, we were talking heavily on this, but this now confirms it, that the flaw is in Primaris. And I think it's interesting to see, what this entails for the future of the sort of specialist Space Marines, or at least the specific ones, i.e. Blood Angels, Space Wolves, Dark Angels. They're iconic units, but they can possibly be affected by the flaws in their genes. Not that Dark Angels have any flaws whatsoever, but we can all make jokes, etc. on that one. But what this does is that it shows that there may be a future in this, and I'm very excited to see what that might be, but I sadly think it's not going to be anytime soon. This is just the beginning, and I'm personally, and I've been talking about this for a while, that I've always said that what's going to really help Blood Angels, Space Wolves, Dark Angels is that they need like Primaris versions of their specialist units that'll really upgrade the models, etc. Maybe upgrade the regular Space Marine ones as well, though I highly doubt that'd happen. But just to give them these sort of Primaris, but specific to Legion, I think will add in a lot of character. Next is basically missing units, specifically ones from Shadowspear. So you've got, your Captain Phobos Armour, Librarian Phobos Armour, Lieutenants, etc., etc. You also have the Invictor Tactical War Suits, you have the Repulsor Executioner, basically trying to condense all the data sheets for Blood Angels into one book. So I think you don't need your Space Marine book anymore, don't quote me on that one. They're trying to all get it into this one, so it's just Blood Angels and Faith and Fury, Blood of Baal. But you probably already have the Space Marine Codex. So that's not ideal, but it means going forward that, if you're going to play Blood Angels, etc., this is probably the upgrade book you need. And do not quote me on this, you shouldn't need the Space Marine book. Don't quote me on that. It's just, I feel this is trying to cover it as much as possible, which is not bad in a way, because there is many other things in this very specific onto Blood Angels. Either way, this is mainly all bookkeeping to try and make it easier for Blood Angel stuff in as few books as possible, something we all sort of struggle with, etc. However, let's talk about the new and the good things. Blood Angels appear to get upgrades, a very slight one, I need to go through it, to their Legion trait, so obviously Red Thirst, and I believe this is an upgrade. I don't actually have the Blood Angels book, I've got Tyranids one, which I'll speak about later. I don't have the Blood Angels one, but I do know the book quite well because I've faced them quite a few times. So the Red Thirst, where in the past it used to be, when a unit was either was charged, or did a heroic intervention, you got +1 to your wound roll and melee, which still exists, which is all fine. However, they now also, when a unit with this ability advances or makes a charge move, add 1 to the advance or charge roll. That is a heck of an upgrade. I've written this all down as like a script, and then I've realised I've just gone slightly off it. That is really going to help a wee bit. I know an inch doesn't seem like as much, but it is 1/12 of what you actually need to roll when it comes down to it. It does mean if you're like deep strike anything, you're going to need like 8s instead of 9s, etc., etc. Personally, I prefer reroll. Reroll is always better, I think, than adding an inch onto it, but I think that would have been way too powerful. Way too powerful if you had +1 to wound and melee, and you got a reroll charge. Crazy. So, this I think is perfectly acceptable, but you never know when it comes to Marines if their powers may go skyrocketing. But adding on to that does add on a wee bit. They also have a Blood Angels only keyword idea, similar to obviously, you know, your Imperial Fists, Iron Hands, etc. So their specific one, if you take an entire army of Blood Angels, and this is called Savage Echoes, which I'll read. While the Assault Doctrine is active, if a unit with this ability makes a charge, is charged or performs heroic intervention, add 1 to the attack characteristic of models in that unit until the end of the turn. Note that this is cumulative with the bonus that these models receive from Shock Assault. So that's quite good on that one. You know, it's a bit more trickier because, again, we sort of look down on the Assault Doctrine ones. I'm trying to remember, I think White Scars get it and Black Templars. It's a bit more trickier to pull off. But simply put, an extra attack can make a heck of a difference. Unfortunately, it does take 3 turns to pull off, you know, to its true effect. And that's tricky, is what it is on that one, but it's nice to have that you do have this extra ability. I know many people, obviously, things like, is it the Iron Hands that have it in the Devastator Doctrine, which is turn 1, and they just lay waste starting with it and they very rarely change. This one makes sense lore-wise. If they had something that was in the Devastator Doctrine, I'd be a little bit surprised, but it does make sense. And it's nice that they do represent that, you know, the other specific legions, that Blood Angels will get one, and with that I imagine Dark Angels and Space Wolves will as well in the future. Next page is Vanguard Warlord traits, which is just again trying to make sure you don't need to have the Space Marine Codex. And then we come on to stratagems. So many new stratagems get a mighty 23, which is superb. Not many of them I see are pretty much, you know, a lot of them are from the Space Marine Codex. In total, there is 17 from the Space Marine Codex, and then there is 6 that are exclusive to Blood Angels. So Blood Angels ones, and I'll list out the name, are Visage of the Damned, Refusal to Die. If I have any of these are actually Space Marine ones, correct me, but I did try and check as best possible. Honoured by Baal, which I think is successor only. Yep, so that's successor only, and it's basically about relics, etc. Death on the Wind, which is really good, that's my note on it. Unbridled Abdor, Explosive Judgment, and Chalice Overflowing. So I'll speak about the Death on the Wind, so I can remind myself of it. Use a stratagem in the fight phase, select 1 Sanguinary Guard unit from your army until the end of the phase. When resolving an attack made by a model in that unit, treat a damage result of 1 as 2. So I think this is obviously Sanguinary Guard. It's 1 command point, and they come in, they hit very hard, and they get, I think their weapons do D3 damage. It's 1 command point to ensure that you're doing a minimum of 2 damage, and that's not bad. Maybe I would have preferred that they get to re-roll their damage, so you get a higher chance, more risk but more reward. But that's a solid way to ensure that you're getting 2 damage per swing, and I think that's actually pretty good as well. So I think that's quite nice. The rest of them I didn't have notes for, but I think they are just generally not bad. None of them I thought were particularly, you know, amazing on this one. I think maybe Explosive Judgment. Use a stratagem in the Shun phase, select 1 Sanguinary Guard unit from your army till the end of the phase. When resolving an attack with an Angulus bolt gun by a model in that unit, you can reroll wound rolls and the target does not receive the benefit of cover, 1 command point. I think the Sanguinary Guard guns are actually very powerful. Again, I can't remember, I don't have a Blood Angels Codex, but I think 1 command point to give them a much better chance to wound with them, because I think it's got better damage, it's got better AP, it just gives them better. And quite frankly, that's two stratagems that are focused on Sanguinary Guard and makes them a lot better, so that is quite nice to see for Blood Angels. We then have the Obstruction Discipline, which again is a bit of bookkeeping because that's from the Space Marine Codex. We have Litancies of Baal, which again seems like bookkeeping, but they do have a Legion exclusive one, similar to Faith and Fury, which gave all the other legions their one. In the Litancies of Baal for Blood Angels, their one is, if this Litancy is inspiring, select 1 friendly Blood Angel unit within 6 inches of this model. When resolving an attack made with melee weapon by a model in that unit on an unmodified wound roll of 6, that weapon has an armor penetration characteristic of -4 for that attack. So that's probably really good on Death Company, who get a whole bunch of attacks on the charge, usually with chainswords, etc. And then those 6s, they are going to go right through armor quite easily. So that's quite a nice one to have, I can see, because obviously the chaplains for Blood Angels are actually quite good. I think Lamarty's is an absolute solid one. I won't go back. I think, is it Lamarty's who's the absolute... In fact, I will go back on it. Lamarty's is the one that most people go for. which is a shame in my eyes. Yeah, Lamarty's cool model, but I love Astrorath's one as well. So I can see that just being used with them quite easily. Obviously the other ones as well, but if you choose to charge, I think that is absolutely solid. Relics, not many of these are hugely beneficial from first examination. Things like Angel's Wing is still a solid choice for making a version of Smash Captain absolutely solid. I don't play Marines, you know, I play the close I get to True Loyalists, probably Custodians, maybe AdMech, debating on that one. So, you know, I don't know them, but I do know the absolute fear of Angel's Wing because it gets to like reroll charge and it gets to ignore Overwatch, I believe. There are still things to use though. For instance, there is the Gleaming Pinion, which again is another jump pack model upgrade. This model can charge in a turn in which it fell back. In addition, when a charge roll is made for this model, add 1 to the result. So that is surprisingly not bad. Though you only get +1 to charge, this along with the Blood Angels new rule sort of adds 2 to your charge already, which is again pretty good. You know, if you imagine your charge rolls are only ever 12 inches, that's already covering 1/6 of it straight off the bat. Being able to fall back and charge allows you to move a lot more sort of dynamically. It allows you to obviously choose your targets a bit more, shut down a unit and then do some damage and then move on to another one in your next turn. I like it. I think it could do quite well. We also have the Wrath of Baal, an interesting one. It appears to add 2-inch movement to a model, so I'll read out. Sangre Ancient model only. At the start of your movement phase, add 2 to move characteristics of models and friendly Blood Angels jump pack units. If their unit is within 6 inches of this model. This bonus lasts until the end of the turn. So, interesting one, though this would make me think that, you know, most jump packs tend to deep strike in so they're protected. Having to traverse the field is not something jump packs really prefer. But I can see it being useful sometimes, just an extra 2-inch movement. I mean, it works on all Blood Angels jump packs, so if you are big jump pack down, that could be really, really good. We next have the special issue War Gear, which includes your standards Adamantium Mantle, Artificer Armour, Mastercraft weapons and digital weapons, and they are done, you know, I think they're just the same as the Spaceman Codex, I believe. I think that's what all the Spaceman Codex doesn't get it, I think it's the supplements that get it. So the ones that are exclusive to Blood Angels though, one is called Quake Bolts, which is a bit of an odd one. I'll need to read it out to you. When you give a model this relic, select one bolt weapon that model is equipped with. When that model is chosen to shoot with, you can choose for that weapon to fire a quake bolt. If you do, you can only make one attack with that weapon, but if a hit is scored, the target is failed until the end of the turn, and the attack sequence continues. When resolving an attack made with a melee weapon against a failed unit, add 1 to the hit roll. So, you know, that is interesting. This suggests that you have a bolt weapon on a character, probably like a captain or something. You're going to hit on a 2, re-rolling a 1, and then you're granting a +1 to hit to any units that do get in combat with it, which sounds actually really, really good. I imagine this should not really affect vehicles and Titanic units, but it's what it says there. It does. I imagine, you know, it doesn't cause any damage. There's no damage statistics on it. But adding, you know, basically shoot a bolt at it and go, right, cool, time for everyone to get +1 to attack it is pretty great. And I think it's, you know, if other units do attack it as well because they are considered failed. So interesting one. I can see that being used pretty easily. Maybe even something on the back of the field, firing long bolt shots and just go, right, one shot, quick bolt. Going to get some easier hits. That's great. Icon of the Angel. When a charge roll is made for a friendly Blood Angels unit or a unit with the same successor chapter keyword as a model with this relic, whilst within 3 inches of that model, can reroll any of the dice. So this is going to be very good for deep striking and repositioning rolls. Reroll charge aura. I mean, a reroll charge aura is fantastic. On a force that also gets +1 to their dice roll, to their charge roll as well, is going to be great. So if you get a 6 and a 1, and you're like, well, I'm going to change that 1, re-roll it, and maybe get higher, and it saves you command point, etc. I think that's going to be quite good for very heavy charging forces, which is kind of common in Blood Angels. So looking at relics, I don't see any of them being completely overpowered, that are going to completely replace the other Blood Angels one, but certainly options there to choose from to change up your style. Maybe I'm wrong in that, but you know, maybe some are superior. The Icon of Angel seems certainly a good choice. The Quake Bolts also seem like a good choice. It's going to depend on what people's playtesting are. but I think they are pretty solid choices. Next up, we're going to have a look at flesh tears, because they do get a little bit of a mention in this as well. They're also heavily mentioned in lore. They do take on a segment on themselves and do some damage. Again, I won't talk about that, but their special character, which is Gabriel Seth, does get mentioned quite a lot. So some fun stuff for flesh tears. They've got a different legion rule called Fury Within, which has the same +1 to wound roll, but instead of +1 to charge, I will read out. When resolving an attack made with a melee weapon by a model with this ability, determine which model made a charge, was charged, performed heroic intervention, add 1 to wound roll. In addition, when resolving an attack made with melee weapons by a model in this unit, on a modified roll of a 6, improve the weapon penetration characteristic by 1 for that attack, e.g. AP 0 becomes AP -1. So it's kind of debate on that one, whether you think that's better or not. It means that if you do have mass amount of attacks, which sometimes you will see quite often with Death Company, this could be good. Those unmodified rolls of 6s are going to be AP -4, so just getting straight through armour, which will help. But is it better than having +1 to your charge roll? Debatable on that one. Part of me says it is, part of me says it isn't. Again, it's going to depend on people's playstyles. There is warlord traits. There is 3 of them. They are not bad. One of them is basically, you know, this model ignores Overwatch. The other 2 are ways to get more attacks. One of them is sort of anti-horde, where you get 1 additional attack for melee weapons for every 5 enemy models within 3 inches, up to maximum 3. So if you've got, you know, 15 models within 3 inches, you're going to get 3 extra attacks. So it's only if you're really against hordes. While the other one of Wrath and Rage, when resolving an attack made with this melee weapon by a warlord on an unmodified hit roll of 6, you can make an additional attack with the same unit with the same weapon. This additional attack cannot generate another attack. And that's more against smaller units that may be against. It's again going to depend. I don't know the warlord traits too well for Blood Angels, but I think they are okay, and really depends on your playstyle there. The stratagems, they have 2, Savage Destruction and Aggressive Slaughter. Aggressive Slaughter essentially allows you to, you know, make a 6-sense consolidation. Savage Destruction, basically when you cause a casualty, I think, in combat, is destroyed, counts as, yeah, it's in the fight phase. If you cause a casualty in it, any casualties caused count as 2 rather than 1, so you can cause more morale, but it is 2 command points. That's maybe a bit heavy. If you are facing maybe elite forces, like a big blob of Terminators, and you want them to try and flee or force your opponent to spend command points, that might be a solid use as well. You have to use it at the start of the fight phase, not when you've caused the casualties. If it was when you've caused the casualties, it may have been better, but having to sort of engage with it at the start of the fight phase may be a little bit too much. Relics, they get 2, and again, neither of them are impressing me too much. One's like a chainsword, which is okay. It's designed to really take out more. You get more attacks and you cause mortal wounds, but again, AP -1 damage. It's more against hordes, I'd imagine. It's okay. And the other one is for Sanguinary Priest, and again, I'm not impressed by that. Finally, everything at the back of it actually has a name generator, and the points for, I think, everything in the Blood Angels Codex, yeah, it's like huge amount of points in there, you know, 3 pages solid points. I think that's to cover basically, so you don't need to use the points your Blood Angels book. This is everything upgraded here, though we do have now a new book that covers everything in the game, so whether that helps or not, but I think it's cleaner to have all the points in one place, keep it correct. Overall, this is your supplement book. No question on it. Add a few units, stratagem, the Blood Angel keyword, only in your army rule, etc, etc, etc. This is the Blood Angel supplement. You still need your old books, and maybe you don't need the Space Marine Codex. Do not quote me on that, because I don't want anyone throwing away their book or not buying it and then blaming me. It's just my feeling on it. Honestly, would have preferred a new book, you know, or at least the supplement books. I really like the Space Marine supplement books. Wish they did it for Chaos, because they brought a lot of flavour, gorgeous artwork and everything. But, you know, this will suffice for Blood Angels for now, until they do whatever they're planning next, you know, whatever that might be. You know, we'll see in the future. Keep in mind, you know, 8th edition in the summer will be 3 years old. Not speculating anything here, but that's me just saying. Right, let's move on to Tyranid. So first thing first, this only affects Tyranids and keyword Hive Fleet. They say you've got to have like the keyword Hive Fleet, so it's not, and they're very specific about this, not going to affect Gene Stealers. Honestly, makes sense. I imagine they're going to get a faction focus, Psychic Awakening, in the future, as they have promised that every faction will get a Psychic Awakening section. So this is the Tyranids one, not Genestealers. So I'm going to summarise, because they have a page of what the sort of summarise is bio-artifacts, which is like relics, stratagems, adaptive physiology. This is your Space Marine Legion customization rule, Hive Fleet adaptation, and many people have been annoyed by this because it's essentially like special rules for infantry or monsters, but you have to give up a warlord trait to do it. This one's been talked about a bit, but again, I'll talk about it in a minute. But people have been annoyed by it, but I'm actually seeing it as a positive, and I'll explain why later. Hive Fleet psychic abilities. So, you know, your behemoth and everything, your psychic abilities specific to them. You know, each of your Hive Fleets do get one specific. So let's look at them in a bit more detail, starting with the bio artifacts. So Tyranids already have a huge amount of artifacts to begin with, and so there are a few extra to have as well. Again, none I think that make the last ones redundant, but more options to choose from. Notably is Venathorn Parasite, which is model equipped with Stranglethorn Cannon and or Heavy Venom Cannon only. When this model shoots with a Stranglethorn Cannon or Heavy Venom Cannon, do not roll any dice when determining the type characteristic of that weapon. Instead, it has the maximum value, e.g. Heavy D6 makes 6 attacks. Now, I think there's a way for Tyranids to do this effect. I could be wrong. I think David's done it against me where you already do this, but I could be very, very wrong. I couldn't find anything when I was looking through the book, but maybe very handy on, let's say, a Flying Daka Hive Tyrant, which I think can have both a Stranglethorn Cannon and or Heavy Venom Cannon, I'm pretty sure. And it doesn't say it affects, you know, one of the guns, it affects both, and I think you can have 2 of each. So like your Heavy D6, that'd be heavy, you know, Heavy 12, essentially with both weapons, which is quite good. I think that's going to be good for Daka Tyrants. We also have Pathogenesis. Add 8 to the range characteristic of ranged weapons a model with this relic is equipped with. In addition, when a model with this relic fires Overwatch or is chosen to shoot with, you can reroll a single hit roll and you can reroll a single wound roll, which is not bad. You know, it just means you get a reliable amount of, you know, hits in, and you can also reroll wound. I think that's quite nice. Is it better than maybe the Venathorn Parasite? Debatable on that one, but just adding more range and also, of course, better hit and wound. So I think that's not bad. It doesn't say it has to be a failed one, so obviously if you've got a -1 to it, you can re-roll it to try and get better, which is nice. Lastly, upgrade is the Arachnakite Gland. Models with the adrenal glands only, this relic replaces adrenal glands. When a charge roll is made for a model with this relic, roll 1 additional d6 and discard 1 of the dice. In addition, when an advanced roll is made for a model with this relic, add 1 to the result. So I believe adrenal glands basically add 1 to your charge and 1 to your advance. This allows you to roll an extra d6 and then discard the lowest one as you choose, because you will obviously discard the lowest. Not bad, again, probably more for a charging unit. The stratagems for Tyranids. Now this is where they really get quite good in my eyes. Now, to go back on Faith and Fury on that one, I thought that was really strong for Chaos Space Marines because they got so many stratagems, warlord traits, and relics that were really awesome, really, really good. And they made, I don't want to say they made up for Legion traits, but certainly they got much better options than some armies would kill for. And certainly with the stratagems, I think they've done really good with the Tyranid ones. Certainly they've got a bunch that actually focus in on helping a unit, but also some of them are for helping multiple units. So I'll speak about a few of the key ones here. So we have Grasping Tendrils, which is the first one. 1 command point. Use a stratagem in your opponent's movement phase when an enemy unit that does not have a minimum move characteristic and is within 1 inch of any talk screen from an army is chosen to fall back. Roll a d6, adding 1 to the result. If they are an infantry unit on a 3+, that enemy unit cannot fall back this turn. So that's really good. It's an absolute nightmare to be stuck in combat with people when you really don't want to. It means you can protect them from shooting, etc. And I know that talk screen is an absolute pain sometimes, so just being able to hold units into combat really does make a very good effect. So that is an absolute solid one for 1 command point. Symbiotic Devastation, which is the next one after. 1 command point, use a stratagem at the start of your shooting phase. Select 1 X-Green unit from your army. Until the end of the phase, that unit is treated as not having moved in your movement phase. Why is that good? Exocrines, I've faced them once or twice now, are in my mind, awesome as long as they don't move, because they get their upgrade of being able to shoot twice if they don't move, and I think they get +1 tit if they don't move. This means if you are forced to move, then you spend 1 command point, and it does mean that, oh, I didn't move, it's fine. Let's say a wee bit out of dodge. I don't think it counts that if you fall back, then you still can't shoot. It doesn't say that, it just says you haven't counted as moved, not as fall back. But still something to bear in mind if you're like, I have to move away, there's too much danger there. It gives you, or I need to reposition, that 1 command point gives you that option. I think that's great. Essentially doubles up your attacks and also +1 tit if you were forced to move. Feral Instincts, 4th down, 1 command point. Use the stratagem in the fight phase. Select 1 Harmagaunt unit from your army until the end of the phase. Improve armor penetration characteristics of melee weapons models in that unit are equipped with by 1. AP 0 becomes AP -1. So, yikes, this can be deadly. A large unit of Harmagaunts can throw a bucket of dice, but have limited -AP. This will make them a lot more deadly, as going from 0 to -1 really does make a heck of a difference. I don't know the Tyranid stratagems too well. I am actually going to be playing Tyranids very, very soon, and going to be focusing on trying to represent this Psychic Awakening as much as possible for them. So it'll be certainly one to try, and as I learn the Tyranids. But I think that's really good if you're a Harmagaunt player. Adding that -1 AP, especially if you're fighting things that, well, just about anything, -1 AP is next to always good, because you don't have diminishing returns. For instance, if you're fighting like Thunderhammer Storm Shields, you know, you don't want to be -4 AP because Storm Shields will just soak it up. -1 AP means it's a bit, their Storm Shields are kind of redundant. So I think that is an absolute great one for 1 command point. Hive Instinct, which is 1 command point. Use the stratagem in the charge phase. I think this one's a bit more complicated, so bear with me. Use the stratagem in your charge phase. Select 1 enemy unit that is within 1 inch of an Hive Fleet Synapse unit from your army. Until the end of the phase, when a charge roll is made for a charge made by a friendly Hive Fleet unit that targets that enemy unit, roll one additional d6 and discard 1 of the dice. The first model you move as part of the charge must end its move within 1 inch of the enemy unit. Otherwise, the charge fails and no models in the charge unit move this phase. So again, this is almost as if you move your Synapse unit into charge. Then you want your wee units to come in. This gives them a much more ideal way to charge in and make it. So not bad, you know, I think that could be quite good for 1 command point. Again, situational, but just ensuring more charges. Aggressive Adaptation, 1 command point. Use the stratagem in the fight phase when an enemy unit is destroyed as a result of an attack made by Hive Fleet model from your army. Until the end of the battle, improve the armor penetration characteristic of melee weapons that models in that model's unit are equipped with by 1, e.g. AP 0 becomes AP -1. Each unit can only be affected by the stratagem once per phase. So that's really awesome. So basically, if you've got a unit that's stellar dismantling of an opponent, you upgrade them for 1 command point to have another AP -1. I think Tyranids don't have many solid ways to get up the APs all round. There is a few ways, and certainly if you get like rolls of 6, they become like AP -4. This just adds to it, and I can't stress more anything. I love sometimes just being AP -1 rather than AP -4, because then both saves come in. This is just a good way to go, your armor save's not saving you this time. So I think that's another solid way to add in the AP rolls. I think Orcs are another similar one. You know, Horde armies in combat, but they don't have many chances for AP. This is adding it, and that can be quite dangerous. Psychic Fissure, 2 command point. Use the stratagem at the start of your opponent's psychic phase. Until the end of the phase, when a psychic test is taken for an enemy unit within 12 inches of any Hive Fleet Synapse unit from your army and the test has failed. Remember, I think you've got your Terrors of the Warp. Oh, don't correct me on this one. Don't correct me on this one. I'm going to feel terrible. Oh, you can correct me if you want. But basically, I have like a -1 on like psychic tests. If the unit from the army, Synapse units from your army, and the test has failed, that unit suffers DC mortal wounds. So that affects all Synapse units, So anyone within 12 inches of 1, if they fail their psychic test, D3 mortal wounds. That can be devastating for things like Grey Knights, for Thousand Suns, for anything that tries to buff up, etc. If they fail, and especially if they're like one wound models, they're going to suffer D3 mortal wounds and are going to explode and do damage on their unit. That, I think, is a real good way to put pressure on psychic heavy armies. So I think that is really, really good. Overall, I think the Stratagems are useful. I think they're pretty darn good. Some focused on helping specific units, some helpful to do tricks. As I said, like the Chaos Psychic Awakening, I think this has been really, really good and seen a big upgrade in terms of stratagems, and there's certainly many you're going to use. So next we have Hive Fleet Adaptations. Again, this is coming from sort of idea of making your own chapter of Space Marines. Chaos Space Marines didn't get it, but fair, okay. But Hive Fleet, it does make a heck of a lot of sense. And I think in this one, you know, Codex Tyranid describes how Hive Fleet keyword can be substituted with the name of a chosen Hive Fleet, as well as describing the abilities that units in Tyranids detachments gain. One of these abilities is Hive Fleet Adaptations. If your chosen Hive Fleet does not have an associated Hive Fleet adaptation in Codex Tyranids, you can create its Hive Fleet adaptation by selecting 2 different rules from the following list. So the ones I've seen have been quite good are, because there is, I didn't count this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. 17 different ones you can choose from. So the ones I've seen that have been quite good are Biometallic Cysts, which are improve the armor penetration characteristic of Scything Talons that models with this adaptation are equipped with by 1. So that's really good. You know, obviously your Hermagonts, and I think Gene Sealers do get it from it as well. Adding, you know, turning their Scything Talons into AP -1 will shred through armor. So excellent, can fully approve of that one. Next one is Cranial Channeling. Once per turn, when a psychic test is taken for a model with this adaptation, you can re-roll the result. Tyranids have some good psychic abilities, they're not too bad. David has heavily used them against me, and I think he's made some very, very good strategies to use psychic abilities. So if this was maybe your second one, to make sure those it's basically once per turn you can re-roll a psychic ability for any one of your psychers. Just means that, you know, you get it more solidly. So I think that's a really good one to have. And next up is Pack Hunters. When resolving an attack made with melee weapon by a model with this adaptation against a model that contains fewer models than the model's unit, improve the armor penetration characteristic of that weapon by 1 for that attack, e.g. AP 0 becomes AP -1. Again, more AP grind down. And I think if you are going to play a huge amount of Horde, this is going to be deadly, just to shred through armor. That with Biometallic Cysts is just going to be a lot of deadly if you're just going to swarm, you know, Hormagonts and everything, just absolutely lay down. So I think that can be quite deadly as well. So I think they're quite good, offers a bit of variety, interesting to see what combinations people come with. So we come to the adaptive physiology. So some people are annoyed by this. You know, I'll read out. If a Tyranid's character is your warlord, rather than determining a warlord trait for that model, you can then select an adaptive physiology for 1 Tyranid's unit from your army. To do so, before the battle begins, select 1 Tyranid's infantry unit or Tyranid monster unit for your army, and select an adaptive physiology from the corresponding list below. The adaptive physiology applies to select a model or unit until the end of the battle. Write down the adaptive physiology the model have for your army roster. If you have a Tyranid's character in your army, you also have access to Progeny of the Hive stratagem, which is use the stratagem, 1 command point, use the stratagem before the battle, select 1 Tyranid's infantry unit or 1 Tyranid's monster unit from your army that does not have adaptive physiology, and then select 1 adaptive physiology to apply to that unit or models to the end of the battle. You can only use the stratagem once per battle. So if you do want to keep your warlord trait, then a command point and you get this as well. You can also, I believe, then give this to your warlord, so you get a warlord trait and the adaptive physiology. What combination you can get from that, I don't know. But I didn't see anything from there that says, you know, if you give the warlord trait and then use the Progeny of the Hive. Don't know. I think it's okay. It's essentially a whole new list of warlord traits, because if you don't take a warlord trait, you can take one of these, and or an upgrade for an infantry or a monster. So interesting in that one. What ones have I seen that have been good? Infantry ones, because it's got infantry. How many infantry ones does it have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then monsters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So infantry ones enhance resistance when resolving an attack made against this unit with a weapon that has an armor penetration characteristic of -1 or -2. That weapon has an armor penetration characteristic of 0 for that attack. It's really good, you know, if you've got infantry models. I don't know which ones would be best. I want to say warriors or something, but basically anything that might target with like low AP weapons, they're going to get ignored unless you're like, oh, I have to engage with AP -3. Then yeah, it's a good way to add a bit of resistance. I think that one's not bad. And we also have adrenal webs. which is when this unit consolidates, it can move up to 2d6 instead of -3. That's deadly, because at worst you're going to get 2, at most you're going to get 12. You can just suddenly shift a huge amount of field and consolidate area and just shut down a whole bunch of units if you consolidate well. So that's interesting on that side as well. Quite like that one. For the monsters, we have a fair few good ones here. Let me just go over my notes. Dermic Symbiosis. This model has a 5-up invul. In addition, if this model has a damage table, it is considered to have double the number of wounds remaining for the purpose of determining what roles to use on that one. So good for an extra screen, you know, if you suffer a lot of wounds, then you get a bit more protectivity from 5-up invul, but you also get to make sure your damage table isn't so bad. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Ferocious Ammunition. At the end of your shooting phase, select one enemy unit that has had one or more models destroyed to this phase. As a result of an attack made by this model, that unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. That can be deadly. Well, it can be good. You know, you cause a wee bit of damage and then add on extra D3 mortal wounds. Generally, if you're going to stick on a big monster type unit, that's just, they're going to be asking to be killed, because you don't want to be consistently putting out more D3 mortal wounds. Again, not bad. And last, we have Murderous Size. Before the battle, select one melee weapon that this model is equipped with. Till the end of the battle, add 1 to the strength and damage characteristic of the weapon and improve the armor penetration characteristic of that model by 1, e.g. AP0 becomes AP -1. Again, another way to add to the weapon, rather than like the model itself, but adds to the weapon. Almost like a relic. I don't know Tyranids too well to know the best combination for this, but an upgrade list is almost welcome in any force, so I think that's going to be good. Love to hear what people's thoughts are on them. And lastly, we have Hive Fleet Psychic abilities. So for your various Hive Fleets, your Behemoth, Kraken, etc., Leviathan, they all get a specific psychic ability exclusively to them, which is common what you'd see in sort of forces now. So the key ones in there, because there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, each for the Hive Fleets. The ones that got my eye is Behemoth. Unstoppable Hunger has a warp charge of 7. If manifested, select one friendly Behemoth unit within 9 inches of the psyker until the end of the turn. When resolving an attack made with a melee weapon by a model in that unit, add 1 to the wound roll. So I always say if you can augment the wound roll rather than the hit roll, because there's plenty of things that augment hit rolls, it's always kind of better. And I think just adding to that wound roll is really, really nice. What combination go for that? Don't know, but always good to have a wee bit extra on the wound rolls. Certainly if you're going for things that are like low strength, then just getting in those extra wounds is going to be fantastic if they're high amount of dice. Kraken, which is Synaptic Lure, has a warp charge value of 5. If manifested, select one enemy unit until the end of the turn. When a charge roll is made for a charge made by a friendly Kraken unit that targets the enemy unit, you can reroll the result. Odd one, because it does not mention a range in any way. So I assume it's unlimited, correct me if I'm wrong on that one. Allows a reroll charge against unit from any Kraken unit. So if there's like a unit you just want to bog down on and absolutely charge it to death, this would be quite a good one to go, right, going to do a Synaptic Lure, and then everything's going to charge in on it and they all get rerolls. Could be pretty good. And lastly, Gorgon, which is Poisonous Influence, has warp charge of 6. If manifested until the start of your next psychic phase, improve the armor penetration characteristic of a melee weapon that friendly models in 9 inches of psyker are equipped with by 1. E.g. AP0 becomes AP -1. So again, more AP improvements, which I could be wrong. I think Tyranids were maybe lacking in. Now you've got lots of options through stratagems, through Hive Fleets, through the the Hive Fleet adaptations. Plenty of ways to give yourself more AP. And that's going to be deadly for units that do have high amount of attacks. Then you've got a name generator, obviously, for your units there as well. And that is it. That is Psychic Awakening Blood of Baal. Now, in terms of my view and where it is, I think the Blood Angels are going to get a solid about 5 out of 10, maybe 6 out of 10. It is about cleaning up the codex, the supplement for them, and adding everything they get in from, like, say, a supplement book in there. So it means that you've just got your Blood Angels book and Psychic Awakening Blood of Baal. For the Tyranids, I think they're actually a bit more solid. There's a lot more things I think get more use of. The stratagems seem solid. The relics are okay. The adaptations, the options there I just think are a little bit more open. It's not got as much bookkeeping or anything, it's just got all new stuff that seemed really, really awesome. So that's going to get like a 7 or 8 out of 10. It's not as good as the Chaos one from Faith and Fury, but it's certainly good for Tyranid. So I'd say, controversially, because a few Tyranid players are already not happy with it, I think Tyranids are a winner in this one. But you can prove me wrong, and I will see if I'm wrong when I play the Tyranids later in the month, and I hope to try out a few of these tricks. So thanks again for watching. Please comment, share, and like, and subscribe. What do you think of the second wing Blood of Baal? Do you think you Blood Angels people are going to be happy with it? Obviously, you've now got that glorious Mephiston model. I personally prefer him with the plasma pistol out, but I think it's quite cool. Certainly a big improvement, but it just keeps your codex a bit more easier to understand, and also some big upgrades. And then Tyranids, I think, are a big winner in this one, and I'm delighted to give them a try. Make sure to check us out on social media. We now have Instagram, we also got our Facebook, other things as well, where you can see our upcoming projects. Still working on Chaos. I need actually suggestions what I need to add to our Chaos, because I've finished loads. And I'm hoping to start my new project by the start of the year. I'm looking forward to that, because I've painted so much gold and red, it's unbelievable. So you can see me hopefully finish that sometime in December, though I have so much filming to do. And then you can also go on Patreon to help support the channel, because it helps us bring more stuff, brings you more interesting stuff, and we absolutely love bringing you new content, because it's an absolute joy to do so. So thanks again, and we'll see you on our Tabletop Assault Battle Report.